for whatever reason, not getting rid of Danny, this is where you at least get rid of Rafe. Because Rafe, I mean, yes, you trust him, but do you think Stephanie thought she was going to beat Rafe at the end? I don't think so. So why get rid of Cindy, where you have already somebody on the jury who has, I think, a lot of sway with the jury and Gary, who you could tell they really don't like each other. It comes out they don't like each other. They're constantly voting for each other, knocking each other out of touchy subjects. And I kind of think Gary may have had some sway with Bobby John and with Danny would have gone to the jury at that point. So I don't know if any of the Nakums are voting for Cindy if Gary doesn't like her. So I really think that the Cindy vote made no sense. And I think it did come down to the fact that, again, Rafe is playing this game of like, he wants the people who are showing good morals to go to the end. And once she didn't give away the cars, I think he was like, boom, Cindy's got to go.
I think from Final 5 and Final 4, they had mixed priorities for what they wanted to do. I think they voted out Cindy for a challenge prowess more so than the car, in my personal opinion. And then they flip-flopped on that for Final 4, like, oh, Lydia is more well-liked than Danny, who is probably more of a challenge beast. So I think you got to pick a path and stick with it, because that's what didn't pan out well at Final 3.
Okay. Let's get to some of the questions from the listeners that we didn't get to on Wednesday, that we were a little pressed for time. Taryn had to get to Wednesday night's Big Brother. I think we got him done with the panel about 13 seconds before Wednesday night's Big Brother kicked off. So we have a lot of great questions. And let's take one from Jesse Anderson, who asked, if Stephanie was voted out early, do we still see her on Heroes versus Villains?
I think so, because the fact of the matter was she was on the Heroes tribe in the first place, which is only due to her Palau stint. So for her to be on that season at all, if she was a villain, it'd have to be from Guatemala. The fact that she was a hero, I think that means, we don't care about what happened in Guatemala. Palau is what you're known for.
And her tribe was judging her based on the Palau season. It's like they forgot Guatemala existed. It's like they forgot Stephanie could win challenges. So definitely Palau. She was there no matter what.
Yeah, I almost feel like that nobody thinks about Stephanie in terms of Guatemala.
I do.
Yes. I feel like it's not a big part of her legacy.
It's the only part of her I knew, yeah.
Even though it is her best game, like even though she does make a lot of mistakes, I mean, again, Palau, her original tribe just loses and loses, and she is able to survive 2 votes because they decide to vote out Kobe and then Janu quits. So she does survive 2 votes past the not even really emerge, the absorption or whatever you want to call it in Palau. But she does do some things well in Guatemala. Like, she was a powerful player for basically the whole game, definitely the whole post merge. But she. I don't think, just like what Aaron and Nick said, I don't think it affects her standings on Heroes Villains, because she still has that hero arc in Palau, which is how most people remember her. I do think that there were some people when Heroes Villains came out, they're like, Stephanie's a hero? Did you say, like, because the fans are still thinking about Guatemala, where nobody's saying that Stephanie should potentially be a villain if it weren't for Guatemala. But I don't think it affects her standing on the season. I'd love to see Stephanie back.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I think the real question would have been, like, if Stephanie would have won this season, how would she have done on season 40? Nick, do you have any thoughts on that?
Instead of Danny, well, I think better than third, I imagine. I mean, I think we would have gotten more from her. I think maybe there could have been an interesting parallel to Eggs of Extinction and her on Oolong. I could have it's some kind of narrative there, but them being shoehorned together in some unique way.
Trying to think what relationships she has. Like, I feel like she's kind of like alone in a bubble of, like, I feel like she's friends with Heidi. Second time Heidi's come up in this podcast. But other than that, I don't really feel like she has like a lot of close relationships in this cast. Like, I think that if she could have been, like, I feel like that everybody that was on the tribe, like Danny, I think had a bad spot. Like, I think that Danny would have been better off on, don't ask me the tribe names, but on the other tribe, on the, on Yule's tribe, as opposed to being on Rob's tribe, where I think if you played and didn't have a lot of relationships, I think like that was the place to be, where I think sort of like everything ran through Boston Rob. So I'm not sure if Stephanie has any sort of relationship with Rob.
Yeah, I mean, just Stephanie would have been considered one of the more older school players on that season. The older school players just didn't do very well. So I don't think Stephanie's going out there and getting that far into the game. I mean, I think that Danny maybe played the worst game of anybody on Winners at War. And I don't know if Stephanie does that badly, because like Danny just, she basically spilled the beans to everybody, and she had so many gaffes.
Yeah, so she talked a little bit about that in the interview. I think that she just like was kind of in a bad spot from, I think she does the thing where she gets caught saying Boston Rob's name early on. And then I think that what happens is that Jeremy tries to get the heat off of him and says that Danny was going, or I forget if it was did that he said Danny was going through people's bags, or he said he went through Danny's. I think he said that he said that Danny went through his bag. And then I think that everybody was saying she was shady after that. And then I think she was sort of like in like a death spiral after that, where she was like freaking out. She didn't know anybody. And then ultimately she was like an easy person to get out after that. So I think she would have been in a better spot on the other tribe.
Yeah. I think part of the reason she was able to survive here, I mean, I think a lot of it was based on Rafe and Stephanie's mistakes, but I do think the reason they made these mistakes is that she was just a nice person, like a good person to live with. And I don't know if that's enough in Survivor anymore. You still have to look. Ultimately, it still comes down to the social game, but you need to, I think your social game needs to jumpstart your strategic game. Your social relations are what are going to allow you to make strategic moves. I don't think that Danny really has that gear as a gamer, but back in season 11, she obviously had the ability to, as Judd say, put on her roller skates and skate to the end. And she got there with all her friends on the jury.
Yeah. Tell me, this might be a crazy take, but I actually think Stephanie might do pretty well in Winners at War, because I feel like that she has not looked at somebody with a million connections. I think that she would actually like play well with Boston Rob as sort of like a Tom Westman type of like, okay, I'm just going to like stick with the person who's running things. Even if she was on the other tribe, I feel like that she's from the like same part of the country as Tony. Like, I feel like I could see her getting along with like the Sarah Lacinas of the world, or Sophie's of the world. I feel like that she can she's a mom, right? I think she's a mom.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah. Like, I feel like that she's could get along with like Kim's and Sarah's, and so yeah, I feel like that she might be I feel like she could relate to like the Michelles and Adams. Like, she's like not too old. Like, I think that she's actually like probably like somebody who's going to come back, and she's not like super sneaky or anything like that. She plays like a pretty straight up game. So yeah, I think that, and while she's old school, like, I don't know if she's necessarily going to be like if Boston Rob's game goes down the drain, I'm not sure like the new school players are going to be like ready to throw her under the bus.
Yeah, I mean, look, the New Jerseyans did do very well on Winners at War, and she would have been there. Maybe we would have had an all New Jersey Final Four. I don't think she does as poorly as Danny. I just don't think that she wins the game or gets to the end. It also comes down, she would have been looked at someone who's not super connected, but the fact that Tony and Sarah were so connected with each other helped them in the game. So I think you did need some connections. I don't know if she would have had that. I think people like Adam would have been like the super duper fans would have been like, this is awesome, Stephanie LaGrosse is here, or like a Nick Wilson who's watched the show.
Yeah, not to mention Wendell, also a Philly person.
Yeah, oh, that's right, yeah.
So I think she actually was like uniquely situated. I think she would have been like a pretty savvy winner pick for Winners at War, but maybe in another universe. We'll see if the Sliders ever break down that season. Okay. How about this is a question from Nolan Lance. I feel like the fact that this is labeled the forgotten season of Survivor due to the fact that besides Stephanie, now Danny, no players have returned to the game in a future season. Do you feel like that is what has tarnished this season's legacy? If not, what could it be?
I have a theory.
Yes,
I think simply Fans versus Favorites 1 did not have anyone from Guatemala, and every other season post All-Stars basically had somebody. And I think it's not fresh in your mind. You're going to forget it. Because it's such an iconic season. Like, who's like, because you have two from Vanuatu. Obviously, Guatemala had returnees from Palau. There wasn't any Palau returnees in Fans versus Favorites. But then Panama, China all had big people who had a big impact. I think you can fault it on the casting for season 16.
I think Guatemala suffers from a lot of things. First off, the 2 seasons preceding it, Vanuatu and Palau, have such strong stories where even if you don't really remember who was on it, you kind of remember the story of the season. Guatemala doesn't really have that in the same way. And then the seasons that come after it, especially Panama through Micronesia, those are regarded as some of the most important strategic seasons of all time. And so a lot of people look to, Suri and Yule and, the Earl and Todd and Parvati and all that stuff as really important strategic players. So those seasons are looked at, and then Guatemala is in the middle of all that. And it's also the least diverse season of all time. And yeah, that's why I said I found myself very underwhelmed by it, because it wasn't controversial, but it also wasn't
didn't crescendo at the end.
Yeah, it didn't crescendo. There wasn't really, it was really everything revolved around challenges and interactions in challenges. And I feel like that's the strongest point of Guatemala, is the production's challenge innovation. The way that they did the twists and the way that the game was structured, I feel like was very revolutionary for Survivor, introducing the immunity idol, introducing is this the first time we have Feast or Eat?
I think so.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. They just do so many things challenge wise that are very important, or game wise or structure wise, but not really anything that the players themselves are doing. So it doesn't really kind of make this lasting.
Yeah. I also feel like that the people connect with stories, and I think that just by the fact of that, Danny's story was so hard to tell, I feel like that it's just not a memorable story of Survivor. There are lots of things about Survivor Guatemala that we like, but ultimately, what is the story of Survivor Guatemala? And I think that that's something that's hard to really connect with, in terms of if you were going to basically tell the story of Palau, that's a story that is it's kind of a concise story to tell. It's sort of basically everybody forgot about Danny, and then she came back and won. And you kind of already had that story with Chris, who did it in a more bombastic way in season 9. So I just feel like that it was oh yeah, that happened, but it wasn't super a memorable way to tell a Survivor story.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is I wouldn't say on Danny, even though I think, it's been widely reported that she did make the decision to not really tell much to the producers in her confessionals. So I think some of that does go to her. But Aaron and Rob, you both mentioned Vanuatu 2 seasons earlier. Yes, that's a story, a comeback story of Chris, being against all odds, getting to the end and winning. Danny really did something that was very similar. I just think that the fact that it was a character who we didn't really hear from, we didn't really get her point of view all that much, it takes away from the story. I think it's really more a story about Stephanie losing than Danny winning. And even that final immunity, Danny wins the challenge. You don't even, when Jeff says Danny wins immunity, you don't even see her. You see Stephanie crouching down. The camera focuses on her. It's all about Stephanie at that point, not about the winner. And I think that the fact that we didn't really hear from the person who ends up winning the season takes away from that story. But really, it shouldn't be a bad story. It should be a story that we remember, because it's a comeback and everyone likes a comeback. And also, I do think it struggles based on the era of Survivor. It's sort of in that era with, Exile Island, I think, is one of the best seasons of all time. That I think even with Suri and Shane gets a little bit forgotten. I think that the following seasons, Cook Island's great cast. We remember the people on the cast, but Cook Islands has its own issues, obviously. And then Fiji, really fun season, a lot of great characters. Aaron covered it last week. That's sort of a forgotten season as well. And I think that Guatemala is in the wrong era, and it also has potentially the wrong winner who just didn't give enough in confessionals. But it really should be better remembered, because there's so many great characters. I think Brian and Amy are really fun pre-merge characters. I think Brandon Bellinger is one of the most underrated characters of all time. And then you still have Stephanie LaGrossa, who's one of the most legendary survivors of all time. It's not her most memorable game, but it's kind of like Coach in South Pacific, where Coach is a great character, plays his best game in South Pacific, but it's not what he's remembered for.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Lydia Morales is the best Survivor player of all time.
All right. Jack from Texas wants to know, this was the first returnee captain season. Did it do a good job of setting the stage of this concept as a good one for the show? Aaron, did Survivor really create a format here?
They created a format here, but they didn't really stick to it afterwards. I think one of the things that worked about one of the things that worked about Guatemala was that the returnees they were popular, but they were not so overwhelmingly dominant strategic wise that everything kind of balanced out in Guatemala, I feel. Whereas when you see future captains in future seasons, these people were already returnees before they came back again for these. It's not like this was actually, maybe with the exception of David Wright, I think everybody else had already returned before. So it was kind of like a different vibe to it. Like they had much stronger, because especially if you're coming back for your second time, I feel like something changes in the way that you play. And had Stephanie and Bobby John be coming back for the third time for this, it might have been a different season entirely. I feel like this was a really good way to have the most level playing field you really could in a format like this. But it did set the stage for sure. Yeah.
Nick, how do you feel about the idea of this for future seasons? Should Survivor ever do this again?
I think at the time I don't believe they enjoyed it after season 11 because they didn't go back to the well for 11 more seasons. And I think what they were hoping for was
they should have done it again for season 33.
Millennials versus Gen X. That would have been a great. Oh my!
I just think that they didn't get what they wanted out of Stephanie's second time. Like they wanted her to be probably a hero again and like be remembered, like into bask in that glory. But like I just think it just didn't pan out how they wanted to, and they didn't. And until Boston Rob said that thing at the season 20 reunion, they didn't even think, that idea. First time we'll ever do that again. Let's do that. I was like, they actually made a big grandiose thing about them coming back. Like, they're in a helicopter, and they're like, "I'll choose your buff. We're not going to assign your tribe for you. It's going to be random. Like, go to your team rather than like an asset. Like they were branded as assets to their tribe, not like captains." Like
the blessing and the curse of being the Survivor fan favorite is that they're going to keep bringing you back until you're no longer a Survivor fan favorite. Like either you're going to screw it up, or the audience is going to turn on you, and basically that you should be a Survivor fan favorite and then walk out of the casino.
This is why Earl Cole is the smartest Survivor player of all time, because he's only done it once and he has a sterling reputation. I hope he plays again, actually, but I think he's made the right decision for himself.
Yeah, only Tony can then mastermind and then come back and flip the whole thing on its head.
There's only one unicorn, Rob.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
He also had a bad season in between.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. He managed to figure out how to do it. Like sabotage it with a bad one, and then come back and then bring it back from the dead. Yeah. So that's what Tony was able to do. This is a question from Cassie Randolph. Would there be any major differences in the season if Bobby John and Stephanie ended up on the same swap tribe? That would have been interesting.
Oh,
I think that one of them, probably Bobby John. It completely depends on the numbers, but I just think it's more likely that it's Bobby John. I do think one of them ends up getting targeted because I think the players are then like, we have two of these people who just even if they didn't like each other that much, they were just still on a season, on a tribe, living together for probably 18 or 19 days. I think they would have started getting worried about them coming together being too powerful. I don't think they both survive if they're swapped. Again, it depends on the numbers. Maybe Stephanie ends up with her best friends and she's able to save Bobby John because clearly she wanted Bobby John to at least make the jury. But I do think the dynamic would have been interesting. I don't think it would have worked out too well for them as individual players.
So I think there would be a better chance of them coexisting if Stephanie was going to be at the new Yasha with Gary and Amy, and then also like Bobby John had his people. Like I think that maybe there'd be like of a chance of like that kind of like coexisting because that there was like some synergy there with Gary and Bobby John getting along and Danny, and whereas I feel like that if Bobby John got to Nakum, like I feel like that there was already Judd wanted to be the sort of like big dog at that camp. So I feel like that Bobby John was part of like Margaret's whole thing, I think. So I think that would have been more problems where I think that Judd still would flip against Bobby John in that spot.
I have a question related to this. How do Cindy and Judd end up being such close allies by the final six where they're the only one, like Cindy's the only one not to vote for Judd, where when they merge, Judd completely screws Cindy over. Like I think Cindy, Margaret, and who's the other, and Brooke are Brooke are on that drive. Brooke gets swap screwed. I was actually pretty impressed by Brooke in the at least pre-swap of this game. I think she seems to be a pretty decent player. And then I think that they were sort of working with Brandon as the only man on that tribe not to be sick and like throwing up and just like completely incapacitated for the first part of that game. It's crazy that Cindy and Judd, she's the only one who doesn't vote for Judd at the end. And I think that they were closer allies than we really saw.
They were on the same trip the entire game together. I think they didn't have a bad relationship, so they had a good one.
Yeah.
That swap is probably the craziest swap the show's ever done. I was confused when I watched it as a kid years ago. Yeah. I was even more confused watching it a second time for the rewatch.
Do you like it now, Nick?
I like because firstly structuring it as like a pseudo auction. Like if you're gonna remove the auction from a Modern Survivor, why not just do this again? Because like it's just so like it's fun. It's like, oh, he gets a shower, he gets an apple.
Who gets lunch?
Who's the best cheerleader? Oh, Brian, you're swap screwed now. I mean, I just it's so much more. I think it's more entertaining than just reach your hand into a jar, pull out a buff, and then.
I really want to see it again. Just because I feel like the dynamic, if you got people thinking of making them vote people into positions like who needs nourishment, who's the smelliest, who deserves to go on a picnic, if we're modernizing it, who deserves an advantage in this game? I like that would be really interesting to see that play out, and you're swapping on top of that. It would have been very interesting to see now.
What I didn't like on this viewing about it, it's fun to watch. It's unique. And we've seen so many swaps in Survivor history that it's fun to see something different than like reaching into a bag and taking a marble or whatever. I think that what I didn't like is that the two people who, or at least the person, at least for Brian, who ends up staying on Yasha, he's going to end up on the 7-person tribe. He's the person who's voted on his tribe as having the most tribe pride, which is really, I think, sort of code for this is the person that we think is like the most loyal to our tribe. And he's automatically going to end up in a minority. The other tribe is going to see that. It's amazing that Brian survived the Bait Blake vote, because why not just take out this guy who's clearly loyal to his original tribe? They all voted him as the most prideful Yasha member. I think it automatically puts that person in a really bad spot. I don't love swaps too. If you're going to swap it an odd number, hopefully it's send someone to like an Exile Island type thing, which hadn't been invented yet. Well, no, it had been invented because it happened in Palau. You could have done that. Or just like, if you're going to do, I don't love the 3 tribes of 5, but I think that's better than a 1 tribe of 8, 1 tribe of 7, or just wait around. Like that would have made sense.
It was so bizarre to swap at when the tribes are uneven and then they keep the same. Like I know in I think more cases it was 8-5 then 8-5 again.
Yeah,
I don't like that. But you won't see a swap coming at that situation. So that's probably why.
Could we talk about something? I mean, this is the patron show. I feel like we can talk about stuff that we can't necessarily like talk about, like, and not get in as much trouble on the main feed. Do we think that Survivor is like should they have a plan of when they want to swap, But do you think that like Jeff will tell you, oh no, every single thing is in the binder. We know every decision we're going to make from the jump and we never deviate from our plan. So it's like, oh, so in Survivor Palau, that just so happened that you were not going to have you weren't going to have a swap and you basically were going to merge on the same exact day that like, that you let the whole thing run. So, do we think that, Nakum ends up going to the first tribal council, but then it does seem as though like that Nakum has way more firepower than Yasha does. This is kind of early in for the show to do a swap. Do we think that they swapped early potentially?
If they did, oh, sorry, Darren.
Yeah, even thinking about this more, like this was just really bad for the Yasha members, especially if everything is pre-planned. The fact that not only are they swapping uneven, but then they're going to have a double tribal council anyway. And then we're just basically saying that you're even more at a disadvantage. It's just like, I feel like the logistics of that, they really maybe should have maybe swapped it, like done the double tribal council first and then do a swap or something like that. So that way, at least you're not disadvantaged because you got swap screwed. You're disadvantaged because you just didn't fit in with your tribe that well.
Because I know in Vanuatu they did the whole double elimination twist like after in episode 3. Like it's not a new concept to do it that early in the season. So I think I would agree, do it before the swap.
Yeah. But what about just like from a general standpoint? Do you think that Survivor like plays it by ear for if and when they want to swap, or like, hey, this is actually pretty good. Like this is pretty even. It's going back and forth. Let's not do a swap.
I think if they do sort of mess with the fact, maybe they have a range of when, like, we could swap from, episode 4 to episode 6. We'll see how the tribes are panning out. I do think if that is the case, I mean, I would, as a game purist, I would like, we're swapping at the final 15. That's when we're doing it. And no matter what's happening in the game, that's like, for the fairness of the game, that's probably better. But from the perspective of a television show, they did, I think, swap at the right time because this pre-swap, Nakum and Yasha both had very boring dynamics. I don't think there was a strategy conversation in the first 3 episodes. It was all like, Brianna versus Lydia. Brianna doesn't know how to set a pick, and Lydia might be weak in future challenges. Morgan's tired. Lydia works a lot. Jim doesn't have shoulders anymore. I think that, and here's the problem. I like the 11-mile hike. It was unique. It's I think still fun to watch, but I think it destroyed the first 3 episodes because all the votes after that came down to like who was still suffering from this hike. And also like on Yasha, it was just sort of these like old school, like who cares if we're picking the person who's either bad in challenge, working well at camp. I don't want to see that. I want to see the dynamics. I just think the dynamics weren't that interesting.
Yeah.
So I do think swapping at that was the right time. So I think that it is maybe evidence to the fact that that production does say, okay, we need to swap here to inject some energy into the game.
And I do think that the season suffers from like the whole first episode is that like 35 minutes of the 11-mile hike, followed by then an immunity challenge after that, then 2 more episodes back to back with reward challenge. And because they don't even do reward challenges until like episode 4 or 5 on modern seasons of Survivor. They give you a chance to get to know these characters, but it's just, challenge. And we don't really get to know these people super well. Like the couple of women that get voted out early on between Morgan and Brianna and Brooke, let alone Jim also. Like you don't know anything about these people other than like what their Chiron was at the bottom of the screen. So we don't really get a chance to spend time with these characters.
I think that gave good, decent confessionals. Like I think that she had a head for the game. Brooke, I was actually somewhat more impressed by her. I didn't remember anything about her except that she was swap screwed. She was, I think she showed a little bit more than Morgan and Brianna. I don't know if that's even Morgan and Brianna's fault. I think maybe they just weren't that interesting. But tell me, do you think this would have been interesting with the hike? So they tell them, the winner is going to get the better camp. What if they did this? When Nakum finishes first, then Yasha gets in. They say to Nakum, okay, you can either stay at the better camp, but you have to go to tribal council, or Yasha has to go to tribal council, but you have to go to the worst camp. So it becomes an immunity challenge, or maybe you even tell them they'll have like you tell them they'll have a decision. To
What
make.
is this, Survivor Fiji?
Yeah, this is Fiji's twist.
I mean, you know what they're doing. They're
But this
staying
happened
at
first.
the nice camp that worked 11 miles for. They're not going to be like, we worked hard to get here first, but never mind. We're gonna take off.
Can I ask?
No, but then we don't have to have an immunity challenge, and that wasted time. Jim would have gotten put out either way.
It's interesting. The two camps, like we know from Survivor Fiji, from Aaron and I just watched it last week. Okay, one camp is much nicer, and then there's also like all this furniture and food. Like other than the pyramids, is the Nakum camp actually that much better than Yasha camp?
I think
It's
so
scenic.
because they won all the challenges. Like in Fiji, the better camp won more challenges than that. So
What was better about it? Like it wasn't like that. It was like it
more
like,
monkeys
had better fishing or a cave or any sort of like protection from the elements.
My guess would be maybe mosquitoes being less plentiful around ruins that aren't more enclosed in jungle.
I mean, the mosquitoes seem terrible at Nakum.
Yeah,
I don't think the mosquitoes care where the ruins are. I think they just go wherever they want.
I don't think there was any inherent advantage.
Jeff talked about how that Lydia had so many mosquito bites on her booty, which I felt like should have been none of his business.
Yeah, that's why are you even looking here?
The idol was hidden at Nakum, so at the merge, you'll know the way around it. Is that like I'm just trying to pick stuff up now.
I will
It just look cooler.
It's cooler.
I will say I do in life, actually because of this season, I often do once in a while 11-mile hikes, and I call it my Guatemala hike. And even being fully nourished, by the time I'm on mile 9, 10, I'm done. And that's being fully rested and fully nourished and not really caring anything. Like being there in Guatemala and being there in like 100+ temperatures and going that long while also being in a high stress environment that is especially for those first couple days. I mean, wow. Why they made them go that long. You could have done like half. Like I could see like a nice 5-mile hike, but this is, a couple.
I feel like they've done half, like in like Africa was a long walk, but it's a long walk through like plains. There weren't sticks and everything on
it was
path.
wild. They had to go through the jungle.
It's crazy that they start Survivor. It's a different show at that point.
Yeah.
I do think though, and I also remember
challenge.
that this happened, but I forgot how big of a character Margaret was in the first 3 seasons. Like she's the MVP of the pre-swap of and I think also potentially Brandon because of his confessionals. I think of the 2 MVPs of the first 3 episodes.
Brandon's really good. Just to put a pin in the swap conversation, because I'm thinking of this today as I've been watching, I watched 5 episodes of Gabon earlier today as I'm getting ready for the 26th best season of Survivor discussion on Wednesday. Just the way that they do the swap in Gabon is like, okay, you guys screwed up the team draft so bad. We're gonna help you out here, okay? We're ordering the people. So pick the people in the order that we rank them. We've made this so easy for you. Like, that just seems to me like, why would they do it that way if they weren't upset that they did a bad draft of the season? So I just feel like that's something that always like is jumps out to me of like when they swap, and it seems like that it's never like oh my god, everything is so interesting on both sides, and now they did a swap and screwed it up.
I think that this era of Survivor was like a different kind of swap every season, seemingly, like from 9 to what you just said, 17. Like, is there a repeat kind of swap ever? I guess Pick'em was but how you did the Pick'em also varied up a little bit. And I just think I don't know, was that an answer to the people calling the swap rigged in All Stars? Like, oh, well, fine, do you think it's rigged? We'll change up the swap.
They should have done it earlier. Should have rigged it earlier.
They should just put some winners on your tribe, and then you would have been okay.
Yeah. Well, look, if they did if they the thing with Survivor All Stars where that's frustrating is if I don't get voted out that night, like I'm there till like day 30.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Shapira doesn't go to unless they like then they basically like do like I'm like the Jamie of that they just like all right, let's just vote out Rob. He's getting on our nerves, and then let's go back to pagonging the other side. But Chad Shepard wants to know how influential was this season in establishing the practice of hiding celebrityhood. We have Gary and Kent and what's it, Lisa Kiefer, Lisa Welchel, John Rocker. So Gary Hogaboom does sort of like come out and build something here. Basically says, hey, if you're a famous person, you go on Survivor and you say that you're not a famous person.
I think I would go on Survivor and say that I am a famous person. And people would be like, "Oh, this guy's not a threat. He's not going to win. He's this famous person."
What would you say you are?
I would say that I'm Edward Snowden.
Well, people are like, "Oh, don't tell Edward Snowden our secrets. Don't tell him. He'll leak them."
Yeah, I'm Eddie. I'm Eddie Sawkins. Oh, I think Eddie Sawkins is really Edward Snowden.
Yeah, I feel like there's two schools here. There's the Gary Hawkins approach, and then there's the Mike White approach, where it's kind of
Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, just very openly, like I'm me.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it does establish a precedent. I'm just still unsure as to Gary's choice here. I feel like he might have been even more secure, especially among this Guatemala cast. I feel like they would have ate that up. And it's not even like, he sticks out because there's already 2 returnees. So it's not like it has to really feel like, oh, well, I'm the only person that's well known outside this show.
Yeah. And there's some fun stuff in the Talking with T-Bird about Gary Hogaboom, because I asked Danny, it's like, but Danny, like you were the person that was calling out Gary. And then you end up on the tribe with him, and then you were analyzing. Did he ever like think you said, "All right, you got me"? And she said, "No, he never did."
What?
And he always insisted. And then she would say, and she said that, and then there was a bunch of other times where he'd like talk about football stuff, like completely like forget that he's not supposed to be Gary Hogaboom.
So maybe it was an open secret at that point where everyone knew, but maybe they just didn't care. But honestly, I do think Danny not publicly blowing up his spot. I mean, she did to Brian like in that challenge when they were in the mud, but that was before they knew each other. But I think the fact that she didn't blow up his spot maybe is a point in her favor in terms of her social game, because like, what is that really going to do except potentially get Gary to dislike you? So I do think that another player, if Judd like recognized Gary from the NFL,
hey, that's Gary Hook. Yeah, Gary Hogaboom, man.
Yeah, if
I think you're not a damn quarterback.
Yeah. I think if Steph finds out, I think that she's telling everybody. I think that if Bobby John, I don't know about Bobby John, but Jamie, I think some of these bigger personalities who maybe didn't play as good of a social game as Danny, I think maybe they blow up his spot. And to what end? Maybe you get Gary out, but you also now have an enemy in the game, and maybe you lose his jury vote because you blew up his game.
Yeah.
Was it Dawson who outed Jeff Kent, or like hinted at knowing Jeff Kent in Philippines?
She says it in the confession.
Yeah.
And then it was Wu who outed Cliff.
Yeah. So I feel like that we have enough of a sample size to talk about, okay, what do you do if you like, we could like talk about this like from the perspective of the famous person and the perspective of the not famous person. If you recognize a famous person who is saying that they are not a famous person, how do you handle that situation? Because we've seen like people that try to like passive aggressively, like sort of like hey, you ever, bring like casually like bring it up? That seems like to greatly hurt the famous person. They don't like that.
Yeah,
I don't think that's the move. I think the move is to keep it a secret from the celebrity that you even know it, and then either use the information if you feel like it's the time to get them out, or if you go to final tribal council with them, maybe you pull a Penner who wasn't in the game, but like if Penner was in the finals against Lisa Welchel, he could have said Lisa Welchel's an actress, so she doesn't need the money. I feel like there's either you use it strategically or you don't use it at all.
But isn't Penner also an actor? So it doesn't really work.
And also,
Yeah,
did
but
Penner
not like
talk to
Lisa.
Lisa?
I mean, yeah.
Yes, he did. He brought it up to her
Yeah.
on the beach, but then didn't out her to everybody else. What about if you are the famous person? When do you drop the facade? Like Cliff Robinson is another person, and we don't really talk about the late great Cliff Robinson. He tried to, I think, say he wasn't Cliff Robinson, and then Wu was like, "Dude, I know who you are. You're
He's
Cliff
6'11".
Robinson." And then I think he just basically was like, "All right, you got me."
If you're
Like, I don't
super
think he fought it too
recognizable,
much.
if you're like a huge 6'11" guy, like a Cliff Robinson, or even like a what's his name from Co Wrong,
Scott Pollard.
Scott Pollard.
Scott
Oh
Pollard.
yeah.
I think there's really no point in hiding that, because of course you're on Survivor and you're that tall. Unless you're like, Mitchell Olsen and you're like kind of like a string bean, no one's going to say you're in the NBA, even though you're 7 feet. If you're those two guys, everyone's going to know that you play professional sports.
What did Scott Pollard do? Did he didn't hide anything, right?
I don't think so.
He has no poker face.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And
That's how
then
we lost, by the way.
He was on the
Ball.
Braun tribe. Have to promote the Braun. So
no. And I feel like there's one
Alan
other
Ball?
one. No, Alan Ball. I mean, Alan Ball was like, who even knows? That's like saying Grant Matos. Who's on like an NFL practice squad.
Yeah.
Well, Alan Ball Alan Ball's in Madden. He's in Madden 11. I found
wasn't the person in the other tribe too?
Yeah, there was. What's his face? Steve.
Tom Laidlaw is the other one I was thinking.
Oh, and Brad Culpepper.
Yeah, Brad Culpepper.
Where's Tom Laidlaw from?
He's a hockey player.
No, but what season?
He was 39.
39. Oh, is there a equivalent for what sport?
Aaron, he's our first Canadian player.
That's right. I blocked it.
Yeah, Jordan, did Tom Laidlaw try to hide the fact he was Canadian?
Did it even come up that he was Canadian? He was so boring that, like, why even give him an extra? They had to. There's so many. Look, think about all the people in the RHAP world who are Canadian. There has to have been much better people to cast as the first Canadian ever on the show.
Well, I think they like
Tom's not interested
an
at all.
athlete. Yeah.
Yeah, who cares? Like, it's more interesting to see just like some random like funny Canadian than Tom Laidlaw.
Yeah. Do you think that there will be any Canadians on season 41?
No,
because of COVID. I don't think
Canadians really. I think they got left behind. It was like, all right, we've broken the glass ceiling of Canada,
and they're like, oh, wait.
And then it's like, boy, that was like 4 years ago. I'm sorry, Canada.
Season 43, we'll have some good Canadians, hopefully.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. Speaking of Gary Hawkins, Christian wants to know, what are your thoughts on the first hidden immunity idol play of the season? Nick, the historic moment in the season, first immunity idol play.
I think it couldn't have started on a better note, because it actually kind of changed the narrative of that vote. At least it had an impact. It wasn't a nothing burger. That I could have imagined like Stephanie finds it, plays it randomly at Final Five, shrug it off, and it was an afterthought. No one cares. And I'm actually kind of surprised they changed the rules of it after an iconic character of Gary used it to save himself. I loved it. I was a big Gary stan when I watched it originally. I was like, oh my God, Gary actually has it. It was going to be him. The only weird part was that it wasn't as powerful. I was like, I remember at the Brian vote, it was the whole like Pirate Master Royal Pardon situation where, votes are red, you see what happened. And then there was a mechanism in the season
it's in my hand.
Or ballots. There was a mechanism in that season to have a something cancel out votes, but they didn't think to use that for the idol. I thought that kind of interesting. I don't know how to rationalize that.
Okay, I know we're talking about a lot of things here right now, but that was a good moment when Jeff said, all right, Brian, all these votes are for you, but there is one last vote to save one person. Should we ever try to come up with like instead of like idol nullifier, we play the immunity idol? What about an advantage of that the vote nullifier of that? Okay, you put it's like a red ballot. Okay, if you wrote the names on here, anonymously, all the votes against one person are canceled.
So it's an anonymous idol. So because it works just like an idol. It's played before the votes are read, but after they're revealed.
So no one knows who played that idol. Like it's like.
So it's a secret idol.
Good twist, bad twist.
I don't hate it. I mean,
I hope
I
it
hope they
shops.
don't like add it in addition to like all the other advantages that we have because there's already too much. I don't think it's really just an idol. Like it's no different than an idol except for the fact that you don't know who's playing it. And I think I do like it. I don't. I mean, I prefer a regular idol because I think when there are consequences to playing an idol. If you play an idol on somebody else, or if you play it for yourself, there are consequences because now people see you as someone who's able to find idols.
Yeah.
I do like that aspect of the idol.
There's not any idle trains.
Yeah, I think the intrigue would be, did you guess right? Because you can't look at people's faces when you play it. You can't change your mind. Like you already wrote the name, so it's like, all right, I think they're voting this way. I'm just gonna put this name down, and if I'm right, cool. If I'm not, then I've just screwed myself.
And
It's worth trying. It's definitely worth trying.
I have maybe if like someone's on Exile Island and they have like someone not even at that tribal council, some other tribe.
It's like Earl on
have
Exile Island during the Erica vote.
That would be how a person not at that tribal could affect the tribal council. That would be how you do it.
I don't know if I like that actually. Because
neither do I. But
there's no strategy then really. I mean, unless it's like post swap or something. But I think you're not really giving the person who ends up getting voted out a chance there. Where if it's an anonymous idol and that's just sort of like so someone's going to get screwed by an idol play. But I think it's sort of the same thing where if it's someone on another beach, you lose the element of like being able to strategize together and live together.
We've talked about the idea, like in these different think tanks, of like the black vote, like some sort of idea of like that the person who is like getting voted out like gets to put like a vote in the urn of like almost like the way that you bequeath a fire token, you're bequeathing like a vote onto somebody, and then maybe if it ever came down to it, that it would either be like, all right, there's one extra vote from last week, let's check what it is. Is that potentially a better way of sort of like okay, oh wait, hold on, stay right there.
I have another theory as well. Maybe a vote doubler, like you double how many votes someone has, because then how you split the vote. But I don't know, just an idea.
Okay. I think maybe if there's another show, like another reality competition show, and that's how the game works. I like that. I don't like it for Survivor. I think it gives someone who's out of the game too much power. Yeah. And
what about Mafia? Can you put is a twist for Mafia? Some of the person who gets murdered.
I'll try anything in Mafia.
Yeah, get the person who's murdered. They get to have a throw an extra vote out on the way out.
Oh. Sure. I mean, look,
they private message you in they private message you in the chat. A vote.
Next week, Mafia, we'll try it.
Because here's why. Because then the Mafia could be like, oh, let's pile on for the person that we know who they're mad at.
Wow.
Yeah. But the thing is, though, when I reveal the votes on the spreadsheet, you see everybody's votes. So if that happens, are we just not revealing votes? But I think so much of the Mafia
they private message you in the chat, and then you do it, and then reveal the vote. I like that for Mafia.
Definitely worth trying. We'll do it. We can do it for Patreon Mafia. Like if it's not good, like there's no one's losing money from this. Like we're fine.
Yeah. The thing that I would want to make sure, like what I like about the idea of the previous voted out castaway casting a vote is that you can now, as a player in the game, account for that. Where that this would be just like what we're talking about, like, ooh, somebody is able to just like anonymously. If you don't tell the players that power is in the game, how does anybody ever plan for it? Where we like the players to be able to think about every scenario that's possible, that you almost put them into a state of paralysis where they're trying to, okay, I know about every scenario that's possible, but what about the scenarios that I don't know that are possible?
I think that's better than the fire tokens, because you're going to give someone a fire token and you don't know how that's going to play out. But a vote, you can like, oh, this person A calling you the leader of the alliance. So they're going to vote for you, and we should pile on that person. Versus fire token giving it's like negative consequence to positive consequence of being voted out. I prefer your way.
To back out to this first idol play, I think something that I really liked about this season, and something that I definitely would be curious about to see if they can pull this off again, is just how obvious this idol was that they hid. It's really large. It's like barely hidden. I would be really curious to see in a modern season, instead of trying to hide these tiny things that they can just stash somewhere, if there's this just huge idol object out there that's not
it was the immunity idol, but just shrunken immunity idol.
Like here's the immunity idol, it's here. Do you want immunity? Yeah.
What was interesting though is that like they had to like describe what it looks like to go look for it, because that you just like they like basically like kept telling you like the size of it, and they didn't really like, because it's like you're in a world where nobody knows what the hidden immunity idol looks like, and so
no,
it's like, is it a stick? Is this it? I don't know.
Ooh, it's sort of like a to take the concept of Battleship from Fiji, what if you just hid, or if there was like, I don't know, Hoarder Island, where there's just all these objects, and one of these random things is an idol.
And it doesn't come with a note.
But you don't know it. Yeah, you don't know if the thing you picked up is an idol or not. I think that would be a very interesting concept.
Yeah, and then it ends up being the podium. It's just the revenge.
Yeah.
I'd like.
I'm gonna play the Mayan ruin. Is the big ruin at our camp? Is that an idol?
Well, maybe I could.
Yeah, this idol, like, and again, it's like on the ruin. It's a big like statue thing. This type of idol in a modern season would have been found day one. I know it wasn't hidden day one in Guatemala. Yeah, what is this this thing that it comes attached? This doesn't look like it's really part of the 2,000-year-old Mayan ruin.
So in the season, Gary Hawkins talks about his great comeback against Detroit. Aaron B gave us the stat line for Gary's quote unquote comeback against the Lions from September 15th, 1985. Gary was 17 of 24 for 255 yards with 2 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown. No question. Just a mention of the slight embellishment of Gary throwing for 300 yards in 1 quarter, although he did it all in the 4th quarter. And Gary's career with versus the Jets is 1-1 as a starter and 2-1 overall with 1 touchdown and 4 interceptions. So what was going on in this game where he had 0 yards passing for 3 quarters and then passed for 255 in the 4th quarter?
I think
maybe he did an 11-mile hike before the game, and he didn't recuperate until the first
quarter. Receivers went for an 11-mile hike. It sounds like.
Basically.
Yeah.
Was he adding the stats from that shooting immunity challenge to his numbers in that game? Maybe.
Yeah.
Here's what I want to know: who gets picked off by the Jets 4 times?
Gary Hawkins. He said none of his passes were on the damn ground, man. Nope. I'd like to know also, Jordan, how much that was yards after catch. Like, was that sort of like the trying to remember, like the 99 yards on Christmas Eve, the Victor Cruz type.
Like the 1 yard pass was for 99.
Yeah,
I would assume a lot of it. I mean, look, he wasn't known as he wasn't a star quarterback by any means. So I don't think he's throwing bombs all over the field in the 4th quarter. I think a lot of them were maybe some of these like West Coast offense type passes. Guy catches it after 5 yards, runs for a touchdown. That's probably what a lot of it was. But who knows? Gary Hawkins, aka Hogaboom, could have had a great game.
Damn, man. Okay.
He didn't suck on that game.
Yeah. Is Judd a Jets fan?
He should be. He seems like a Jets fan. Mm-hmm. He seems like he's in the fireman ed camp of bald New Yorkers. I think he's a Jets fan. He just has that vibe. He's definitely if he's into baseball, he's definitely more
like a Jets fan than a
Giants. He's like a Jets Mets than a Yankees Giants.
Yeah. Okay. Dave S says, do you feel like this season is the most robbed for potential returning players? Judd, Amy, Cindy, Rafe, Gary, Jamie, even Lydia would have been great to see a second. I don't get the sense that Survivor was dying for Lydia to come back.
I was, but yes, and yes.
Yeah. I think any of them coming back would have been a very good addition to any cast.
Well, to speak to that, I do think that Nick, and you brought it up earlier, that I don't know necessarily like if they were forgotten because they didn't get to come back for season 16, but I think that they played far enough back that they weren't like top of mind for season 16.
But Eliza and Amy were in
Well,
there.
I think Amy was such a standout.
That's
Eliza,
That's
like
fair.
Eliza, like with all due respect to the future district attorney of New York, like I feel like might have been like all right, we need another young woman. Like who do we pick from any of these different seasons? And Julie Berry was out. Like they could have picked a couple. Like I think Parvati was even a stretch. Like I think that they were a little bit hard pressed to try to find like who are some like striking young women to bring back for season 16.
And Cindy wasn't compelling enough to bring her back after the car curse. Like she was Eric, like the final 5 blunder before Eric. I mean, it's like think about that.
I mean,
she's not so interesting though for most of the season.
Oh no, I totally agree. But
I mean,
that was a great episode for her. But
yeah,
they brought back Amanda, who just played. I mean, we spoke about how like a lot of the women get voted out early in Fiji. They bring Parvati back, so I think that also. I mean, we lose. Danielle Di Lorenzo. They're going to save for Heroes versus Villains. So, okay. Anything else from Survivor Guatemala?
I think as a fellow twin, I'm at the show. It never brought up there were 3 twins on the season: Judd, Jamie, and Cindy.
Yeah, there was a question about from Solomon who said, since Guatemala has 2 contestants with twins, could there be a Blood versus Water twins edition? What other Survivor players have twins? Well, if we're looking, are we looking for identical twins only? Are we interested in fraternal twins?
I don't know any famous fraternal twins in media. It's always about identical twins. So I think that would have been pretty interesting to see.
Yeah,
that would be so confusing. You'd never know which tribe you were watching. If
I mean, they stuck together. I mean, that could be an element here that we're missing.
Twin telepathy.
That's what brought Judd and Cindy together, because they were both twins.
There you go.
Like, that. I mean, Natalie and Jeremy were very close in San Juan del Sur. They were both twins. So
I didn't know
it's not surprising
that twin?
Yeah.
Yes. It's not surprising that Judd didn't want to vote out Jamie, at final 8.
Cindy didn't want to vote out Judd.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's I bet if Jamie and Judd were at the final 5, she would give them all cars. I bet for the twin connection.
Yeah,
easily.
Could you imagine 2 Jamies and 2 Judds on this season?
I can't imagine what their parents had to go through. This is what I wanted to mention too. With Judd and Jamie, it reminded me. There's multiple confessionals of Judd talking about how nuts Jamie is, Jamie talking about how nuts Judd is, and they both have their moments where they're the crazy one, and the other one in the confessional gives like a legitimate take of like this person's acting in a crazy way. I mean, I think Judd has his stuff together more so than Jamie does. Judd was also, I think, more strategic than Jamie. But it was funny though that they both had confessionals talking about the other one, saying that they need to like get themselves together.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking from our previous conversation, Rob, I think this season further proves Don's point of do not give these contestants alcohol.
Oh, who do you think was loaded at the final tribal council? I forgot to be paying attention for that.
Because Judd, even at that Margaret council, coming off of being really drunk, don't give these contestants alcohol and then send them off to tribal. It's not a good combination. They're not all together.
Yeah, Danny, man, you ever go skating? You ever go rollerblading? Because you were skating through this whole game. I played with an identical twin. Shauna has an identical twin.
Oh.
Hmm?
Yeah, and I forget that I too. Yeah, the girl Shauna, she's got a identical twin. It's badass.
Bangarang.
Okay, all right. Yeah, Michael Green is adding. Looks like Gary did get 3 TDs in that 4th quarter against the Cowboys game, and the Cowboys starting quarterback threw so he came into the game after the starter threw 3
Wait, they
picks.
lost the game. The Cowboys lost, and this is the game that Gary's talking about.
The Lions still won the game, but he scored in garbage.
Well, I guess that's the Gary story. Like it was almost a good comeback. He plays the idol. He survives 2 more votes after that, but he doesn't actually win the game. So I think that's the Gary Hogan. But he was such a fun character. I really kind of not forgot about him, but it's been a while since I've watched like from episode.
Was he that fun of a character?
I thought he was. I really like his confessionals. I think that he's. Again, it's a strong season cast-wise. There are very few duds. There are a couple Judds, but he's not as good of a character, I think, as a Judd or as a Stephanie, or even as like I would say that you know what? No, he might be the 3rd best character of the season potentially.
Well, what's so good about his character?
He gives good confessionals. He has the Hawkins Hogaboom line, which is a running theme throughout the season. I think he's a smart player. He finds the first idol and plays it well. He saves himself, and which makes Bobby John go home. Who Bobby John, I like the guy, but I don't think he should be a returning Survivor player. I'd rather see Gary there than Bobby John. So I think he saved us with more like Bobby John, just like kind of Bobby John. Also, you know, he goes back to back with Jamie. I think Bobby John's really only interesting scenes were the ones where he's yelling at Jamie.
Yeah. Bobby John seems like a nice enough guy, but he also seems like a lunatic.
This should have been like the Sean Rector spot. If you're going to bring back a male and a female Survivor, like Stephanie made a lot of sense. I think this is where you could have brought back a Sean Rector or someone more interesting in the Bobby John spot.
Yeah, I feel like that Sean in like 7 seasons later out of nowhere would like be a little bit like of a weird call to just bring he should have been on the Survivor All Stars. If they wanted to make it up for him for that. I did like my idea the other day of that bring back Amy and Stephanie, where it's like, okay, a woman stand out from season 9, a woman stand out from season 10, and then away you go. But alas. They brought back Bobby John. I met Bobby John one time. Seemed like a nice enough guy.
Yeah. Did you say that he was like, oh, wait, no. Is he friends with Colby? You said like Colby has a posse. Is he in the Colby?
No. When we went to Texas, we went to Austin and we did the know-it-alls, and Colby showed up. Colby, Burton, and Reynolds. Those are the 3 amigos.
Yeah, I think I know. Mandela affected Bobby John.
Yeah. And Jordan, we didn't even talk about Blake Tallisley. Any thoughts on Blake?
I mean, look, I still think that the Bait Blake episode is one of my favorite pre-merge episodes. I think that it's really, and we talked about the disadvantage that Brian Corridan came into on that tribe, where he should have been the vote, or either he or Amy should have been the vote over Blake. They get rid of a 4-3 majority because he was annoying. And I think this is like a running theme on the season. I think Jamie gets voted out for the same reason. Like Blake was in a fine spot. He also talked himself out of the game. And I think it was aided by the fact that Brian was egging him on. I mean, Blake is maybe telling these stories no matter what, like Brian says, because like it seemed like he'd like to talk about himself. But I do think that Brian does get credit for this, of like emphasizing the fact that Blake is an annoying guy and they should vote him out.
So you say that Blake was a boob and Brian turned him into an even bigger boob.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. And yeah, that's the story.
Yeah.
Brian's so much fun. Like I really would like to see Brian on either returning player seasons or some sort of franchise. I know it's not going to it's so far away. Like they're not bringing, except for Winners of War, they're not really bringing back Guatemala people. Like I'd like to see Judd, I think, even more. But Blake needs to come back. He needs to bait somebody else instead of just this guy.
So just one other thing on Blake, which we talk so much about the whole bait Blake situation, but what we never talk about is the Survivor Guatemala reunion, where Jeff goes to Blake towards the end of the show. And he's like, Blake, and there's a little bit of, they bring up Golden Boy, and they ask him about like, Jeff wants to know, so what did your girlfriend have to say during this episode of Survivor Guatemala? What did she have to say? He's like, well, I mean, she thought it was funny, but what I wasn't expecting was that I got a call from her dad who said, "Hey, I can't believe my daughter's breasts got you voted off of Survivor."
You know what? The finale was the only. I didn't watch the live reunion. I completely forgot about it, but that is a hilarious story. And
Jeff's like, all right. Get out of here. Come on.
Family show.
Yeah. I hope that Blake's girlfriend's dad didn't listen to the episode of Twish with Will from America.
I'm sure he's still very tapped in.
He's a patron.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Nick, any final thoughts on Survivor Guatemala?
I think it's for me a top half season of the 40 seasons. I won't say it's like, cream of the crop, but I think anyone who did not rewatch the season should definitely rewatch this season if you're going through the Survivor history.
Yeah.
Underrated season. But still there's to it.
Yeah, I saw. So we had it at 27. I stumbled across the Inside Survivor. I think that they did some sort of they did a season rankings at one point. I think it was last fall. They did season rankings. They had Guatemala at 25. Yeah, ballpark.
Still too low, but I'll take it. Better than 27.
Yeah. Okay. Aaron, do you have any final thoughts on Survivor Guatemala?
Yeah, for me, Guatemala is at 15. This was my first Survivor season. I came in the middle, and I remember really being into the challenges and cheering for Rafe because he was orange in that final 7 challenge. And I still remember that to this day.
I thought you meant his hair.
Wait, because he was on the orange station? That's how you became a fan of him?
Yeah, because my favorite color is orange, and Rafe I was assigned the color orange during that challenge.
Wow.
And I was cheering for Rafe, and then he won, and I was very excited. I just started cheering. It was very, innocent reasons going into this season. And then I kept watching. I missed Exile Island because I didn't know that it came on again that soon. And then I picked up at Cook Islands, and the rest is history. But yeah, this is my first, and it really had me engaged when I was a young child, and I was very excited. I think being the age that these contestants are on the show now, I can have maybe more appreciation for the season. I think there's things that I didn't pick up on when I was younger. That I can kind of laugh at more and appreciate more now. It definitely is an underappreciated season. I think it just suffers from when in Survivor it was really than anything that it did in particular. And I just hope that, even if it's not the greatest season of all time, that people are able to at least remember and talk about Guatemala, and that they don't share the same fate as the Mayans as being lost.
How else are they like the Mayans? Let's see. They invented
Idol.
The idol as a way of like telling time. Sure. So Jordan, anything else from you?
So I have been pumping up Survivor Guatemala for a long time. I love this season. I will say, like,
you've been inflating it even more.
The whole me loving Guatemala thing came out of comments on different podcasts where I would just do a lot of trivia questions from Survivor Guatemala, and to the extent where it was overrepresented by a lot on Twitch, and I sort of ran with it. Guatemala is not in my top 10. I will tell you on my personal rankings, I had it at number 24, and which isn't that far off the rankings here. I do think if I had watched all the seasons, I think maybe it would have been a little bit higher. I think I also I wanted to be careful not to like put it so far up my rankings because it's Guatemala and it's become sort of like a meme with me loving it. But I do think like I have it ranked like lower than Africa. It's a better season than Africa. I have it ranked lower than Samoa. It's a better season than Samoa. I think I like it better than Koh Rong. I think I like it better potentially than the Australian Outback, even though like Aaron having Guatemala is his first season. Australian Outback was my first season. So I think I tend to rank it higher than it actually should be. I do think the fact that on this list that it's ranked like worse than Gabon, worse than All Stars, I think does lend to the fact that it is underrated, because I think it's much better than both of those seasons. Even though I think Gabon has some fun scenes, but like all stars, I think gets the returning players bump, and potentially also it's REJP podcast, so maybe gets a little bit of the Ravas on the season bump, which not your fault. But I think that it's a really good season of Survivor. I don't think we necessarily get the most satisfying winner, but it's not only about the winner, it's about the journey. I think it's a great cast. I think it's a fun game with maybe not the greatest strategy, but we could look at a lot of moves and analyze the strategy, and it's fun to do that too and see why players look at the mistakes the players made and try to figure out why did these players make these mistakes.
Okay. Gary Hogaboom net worth. Anybody want to hazard a guess?
2.5 million.
I'll say 8 million.
4.7 million.
950,000.
Yeah, I'd take it though, to be honest. Like that'd be nice.
I mean, yeah, that is according to networthpost.org. So who really knows? But yeah, I mean, I don't think he accumulated.
He played a long time ago, but he seems like it seems like he's one of these guys who like
what his investment portfolio looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
he seems like an investing kind of guy.
Does he? Okay, there you go. He's a landscaper now, so I don't know if he's really making the big bucks. I don't know. Okay, and then Danny Boatwright, according to Net Worth Post, worth 1.5 million. So Danny Boatwright.
Well, I mean, her husband was a recent NFL player, right? And she won $1 million from Survivor.
Yeah.
How much do you think the third boot gets on Winners at War?
I don't know if they just gave them a guaranteed minimum and then they ended. I don't think that they really up the rest of the prize money.
Yeah,
I don't know. All right. Well, this was so much fun to get together with all of you. Thank you for doing this. Very excited. We will be back with more Twish Ultimate Trivia on with Jordan on Tuesday coming up.
Tonight.
So be on. You know what? I'm not sure if we're going to release it on Tuesday, but we're going to record it on Tuesday. How about that?
Yeah, we'll release it in later in the week.
I got to look at the rest of the podcast calendar because
I forgot that it's not live actually. So that's I try
to space it out and figure and just drop one podcast a day on everybody. Okay. Yeah. All right. Then we'll be back on Wednesday to talk about the 26th best season of Survivor Gabon. I'm very excited to talk about Survivor Gabon.
Oh, I'm
enjoying it so far.
It's a hot mess. There's so many swaps and
it
was one of my favorite TEOS chapters.
Yes. Well, I feel like that I was not loving it in TEOS, but I mean going in with lower expectations here of just entertain me, Survivor Gabon.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for the strategy here.
I needed Corinne and Randy to make it a little bit farther to move it up my list.
Yeah. I just was the weirdest part this morning was just watching Randy walks out of the boma and cracks his head open.
Yeah, that's right.
It's standing with blood all coming down his face. He's I got a scratch. Does anybody know what to do with the scratch? She's I cannot see you, Randy.
Yes,
okay.
It's going back.
All right. We're in Temecula. Aaron, we need to get you back out here. Okay. All right. This was great. Let's give some plugs. Nick, are you not on Twitter?
I'm not on Twitter.
What are you good?
I guess. I've been doing Zoom Genius games with friends and patrons every few weeks.
Become friends with Nick, and then you could play the Genius.
Yeah. Original and
be friends.
Well, I mean, anybody can. I've met people through the game that
Nick,
they meet
we
others.
need you back on Twitter.
Back on Twitter. Never been on Twitter.
Nick, what would be your Twitter handle if you were on Twitter?
Penner hates me. I don't know. Fishman and Goofer. I don't know. Fishman, something like that. I don't know. I'm gonna do a fish. Really. Not fish stack related.
And Goofer. You guys are a real crack ups. Why do you have to say Michelle looks like Tarzan?
Not what the lyric was, Penna. Love that. That was one of my favorite moments of last year. Rough year, but that was a highlight.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So you make a whole Genius game for people?
Yeah, I had 9
you
players.
play the same one over and over again, or you change it up?
change it up a little bit. Some games the same, some games different. They play better. Like one of the worst games from their main show, Abundance and Famine, is a lot more fun with like people on Zoom. And Aaron was a player. He was he played before.
I did do it.
He got
Did you win?
place. He got 5th place.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of fun.
All right. Aaron, where can people hear more from you?
Well, you can either re-listen to the Pirate Master, I guess, for the rewind,
the RGB Rewind podcast feed,
or Fiji if you didn't get to check out that yet. I'm on Twitter at AARobertson94, and yeah, I'm just living life, preparing to get my vaccine next Sunday. Be driving through the Indy Speedway. I think I'll be literally driving on the track and roll down the window, go like, and then I drive off. So that'll be
the pit stop.
Yeah, it's a literal pit stop, so it would be good.
Okay, and then Jordan Kalish, where can people hear more from you?
You can find me at Twitter at Jordan Kalish. You can I typically talking about Survivor, sometimes talking about trivia games that I run. We actually have one planned potentially for Friday, April 30th. And we have a guest sort of confirmed. I'm not going to say who it is because it's not 100% confirmed, but it will be a fun guest that I think people, especially in the RAJP world, will enjoy because it's a name that people in the podcast like. That's the hint. And you can find me on Instagram at Jordan Kalish. You can endorse me on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm all over the place. I'm on Twitch Ultimate Trivia with Rob sometimes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a busy week. All right. Thank you so much for checking out our Survivor Guatemala patron feedback show. We'll be back with another patron feedback show for Survivor Gabon coming up next weekend. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.